Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Exploring Nollywood podcast. I'm your host, Mimi, but people will call me Marianne. And with me, I have
Antonia from the last podcast. It's her sister. Hope everyone's well.
I hope everyone's doing well too. Last time, we spoke about what Nollywood was, we spoke about the things to avoid, we talked about our common stories, but this time we want to go a little bit deeper. I want to talk about the cultural cues and Nollywood nuances, the subtleties of Nollywood, in other words. What are the things that we would see in a Nollywood movie that will make us say, yes, that is a Nollywood movie? Or what things like, sorry, Tyler, what Tyler would see and not understand why people are doing it, or won't be able to have a point of reference for some of the things that we do.
It'll just be things that he won't even notice to him as this is something that's telling you something else, or this is something that is telling you part of the story that's not being said, outright. People like that study film and things like that, they're looking for this thing is blue because and that shows this, or this is red because that shows that.
We don't do that.
But that's the thing. But that's the point, isn't it? So you think that we don't have those in Nollywood, but we actually do. But it might be more cultural, it'd be more things that that you get used to
as a Nigerian or as a watcher of Nollywood.
Yeah.
Number one, the most important one, because we actually need it to live, food. Tony, tell me, how does food impact a Nollywood movie?
To that end, I'll sort of ask you a question. You're watching a film, it's a big house, they've panned, obviously, used house from the outside. Okayly decorated, it's stylish, but it's a big place. You can tell these people are rich. What food will you not see on their dining table or their lunch table?
Swallow. No rich man eats swallow. No one does.
Or they don't record them doing it, but
not even with a fork like some people do. They do not. Any type of swallow. Should it be panadiam? Amala. Maybe they eat amala in Yoruba movies. Semo. What? And of course, but the biggest, the mightiest champion of all the swallows, Eba. How important Eba is to everyone. But yeah, you will not find any type of swallow on any rich man's plate.
And it's always rice.
Always rice.
Eating rice and stew with a fork and knife and you're like, okay.
But they're posh.
Whatever.
No, but that's how you know. When they're eating their food with a fork and a knife, these people are educated. These people are rich. You're telling me any poor man in Nollywood will eat. Okay, let's say they're not even eating their bar. Let's say they're eating rice and stew with a spoon. And you don't see the spoon here. That spoon is big, so you know that they're hungry.
And they see their kumkum.
Oh yes. No, it's not in a nice plate, but that's also very interesting because I don't think there's a way. If you're middle class, maybe sometimes but have you ever noticed if you're making a point, say the food is poisoned by our one and only,
it is a pot of soup.
Isn't that interesting? But yeah, if Patience is Okwo, Pepe, Mama G, when she's poisoning someone's food, and you bet she'll be poisoning someone's food, it's always into a soup.
They never poison rice.
No, how would you poison rice?
I don't know, but I've never.
We're learning some things today. Maybe
poisonous soups that people aren't gonna eat.
Yep.
What are you doing?
So yeah, definitely. When it comes to our national Nigerian dishes, food definitely does tell you something about the people making it, the people eating it, and the people dying from it.
I've seen yam porridge once.
Then let's talk about eateries. Let's talk about restaurants. Like in those days, old Nollywood restaurants were a bit tame. They were mostly an eatery. I don't know.
Oh, those plastic tablecloths.
Yes. Oh my god, those tablecloths! Oh,
with the one flower in the middle. Like, what is that? There's no need.
And then the guy and the girl got to feed themselves over the table.
There's always ice cream. If your man's doesn't buy you ice cream, is that your man's?
And doesn't feed it to you lovingly in the presence of every single person?
That's not your man's.
So, old Nollywood used to do that restaurant thing. But these days, restaurants in new Nollywood, you're like
Echo Suites and Hotels.
Oh my god, Echo Atlantic. New Nollywood be giving people dreams.
But then I feel like New Nollywood is sort of catered by richer people, so that you won't find any of those like
we're not gonna call them Abba made films because they're made in different places, but YouTube films.
Abba made films. That's so rude.
That's where they're made. Aba, Enugu, Asaba is the second cultural place of Nollywood. But in those YouTube films, and this is becoming less relevant because you now have creators that actually come out and put their films on YouTube. So E3s does tell you something about the characters. And if the characters, well, first of all, if the characters go to a restaurant, that says
that
something.
in itself is something, yeah. And then the type of restaurant that they go to, type of food that they eat at the restaurant.
You know what I think is really interesting is when it's a poor girl and a rich guy, you know, the Cinderella story always. He sometimes takes her to a restaurant and she does that whole marveling at the richest type thing. You know, when she's dressed up, like it's cliche, but sometimes I do love it. And he's got her all dressed up.
Spoon. Really? Girl.
But
I know what a spoon is.
But then you've got the other types of stories where is the poor girl introducing the rich guy to her culture, the way she lives, and then she takes him to a booker.
Yeah.
That's mad romantic, guys. That's mad romantic.
And you can see him, he's confused as to why she's using her hand to eat.
What is this thing?
What?
Do they call it eba?
And egusi.
Meanwhile, egusi is one of the most popular soups in Nigeria. Or imagine if it's a village film. What are they eating? Yes. They're eating yam and palm oil. They are not rich.
Also delicious, by the way.
But that's another, like...
No, but think, how will this village... Think of village woman. How will this village man show his love that she's his love?
Go out and hunt for bushmeat.
Bushmeat.
That delicious.
You know you're loved when your man's comes to you with this black paper bag of unquestionable meat. Like, and what be like, meat is that?
This is what I caught from you in the farm.
What animal is that?
It's true love. That's what it is. That's the nuance. That's the Nollywood nuance that people will not get. Bushmeat equals love. Restaurants, eatery. Now restaurants act as a way to further the story. Usually, old Nollywood restaurants are going out to get into places. It's just to like inform you / waste your time. It's just to waste your time. And even on YouTube movies, they're still wasting your time because they have 8 parts to fill.
Waste your time 2020.
But now they're actually places that matter to the script, to the story.
But then would you say you have that, if you're thinking specifically of food, do you think you still have those cultural cues in New Nollywood?
Oh, definitely. So New Nollywood, food, it's not as important as it used to be for old Nollywood, but it is still there because, guys, we need food to live. So
it's not telling you as much of the story.
No, because they don't have to rely on the surroundings. They can just rely on the script and rely on the directions. So it's becoming less important to use those foods as natural cues, as nuances. What you see is what you get. What's most important is what the characters are doing in a restaurant and why. Well, let's move on to the second most important thing. Fashion. Let's talk about women's fashion and then we'll talk about men's fashion. Women's fashion. Number 1. If she's married, boo-boos everywhere.
Galore. Now, what is a boo-boo? It is the straightest, most shapeless piece of clothing that you own, sewn by your tailor in the most nondescript material you can find.
Yep. That's old Nollywood and boo-boos.
Matching scarf.
Of course.
You know, with those like kitten heel slippers.
Oh, it was a vibe. It was a look. But boo-boos are indicative of the fact that once a woman is married, she dresses different. And I don't know if this is for real, but in Nollywood, definitely, once the woman is being married and she is being shown inside the home, she's always conservatively dressed, new and old Nollywood.
That is true. I think that's another way that you might be newly introduced to a character, and the minute you see her wearing that, you're like, oh, this one's married.
Yes.
That's not a single woman.
Or if she's not dressed like that, it's a specific point to her
character.
They
That's
actually
true.
do. What about Runs Girls, which, as you all know, is our favorite types of movies? Oh my god. Right from the beginning, yeah, shout out to my main movie, Domitilla. Right from the beginning, all those Runs Girls were dressed in the highest fashion. This is...
Watch it back. Highest fashion?
That was what everyone was wearing then.
Should it have been?
Remember when mini skirts were such a thing that everyone got scandalized about them?
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I watched, I think we watched a clip of Domitilla recently, and I'm like, what is that? Those Runs Girls, those ladies of the night, as it were.
Oh my god, that's a brilliant name.
They were, you'd know them because they were the trend. They set the trend, they followed the trend, they were trendy. You will never find... I will use Runs Girls specifically, especially like on these like campus films and things like that. You will never find a Runs Girl lacking. Like,
nah, man. Oh my god, yeah. Oh, and then remember when one of my favorite movies, White Angels, and they had the party. It was a white party, and everyone was wearing white.
I think that was more to do with the cult, but okay.
All I'm saying is that those girls were on point,
and that could be part of the reason why we enjoy them so much, because if you want, like Marianne said in the last podcast, if you want to see
bad girls doing bad things,
doing like hot girl summer every day, that's them. There's always a very, very clear, there is a very clear cut, obvious difference between who's a Runs Girl
and who's
girl. Not a Runs Girl, and who will probably become a Runs Girl, because she's seeing those girls and she's trying to emulate them.
Don't talk too much of it, because we're gonna do an entire episode of Run Girls movie.
I'm excited already.
And we could probably talk for like 2-3 hours just on like the fashion. But what I've noticed though is that the bad girls, the Runs Girls of a film, were setting the trend. Back in the days where before people were wearing braids, where it was a bit more like natural hair, the bad girls of the film, the Bimbo Quintolas, they had braids, and they were like doing long braids. And then everyone adopts braids, and then they move on to those feathered hairstyles.
That feathered wig was a travesty.
It was. They were
that disgusting fringe thing. Oh my god.
They started wearing that kind of... See, it's a cycle. I don't know what influences what. But as soon as the Runs Girls came out wearing the feathered wigs, suddenly feathered wigs were in. And then when they got like the plasticky... Oh, how could you think we were cool running around with plasticky looking hair? The Runs Girls started wearing that, and then it became popular. And then you started to see real hair, people wearing Brazilian real hair, and then lace fronts. The lace front wigs came in, and so either the Runs Girls or the bad girls of the movies were setting a trend, or they were following a trend. I mean,
whether they were setting or they were following, they would have to follow the trend, unless you've come out and you've decided that you're gonna create this new thing. It's not, you have to be on point, you have to be popular for your film to be popular.
You know who we need to shout out? You know who has for years and years and years been carrying Nollywood style on her back? Uche Nancy.
Oh, the director?
Yeah. I can bet you any film you look at now and you go and look for the stylist, it's her.
Oh my god, that's true.
Yeah, she is like, someone give her more kudos. In New Nollywood, I find that they're styled more deliberately, because obviously we're trying to become a more sophisticated art form. So the clothes would tell you about that character, what they're wearing. So they are styled impeccably and according to what you want to say about that character or about the situation. Let's talk about men's fashion. Can you remember, and this is usually being worn by Center B, can you remember the shade of brown all the serious big guys had? Center B, Bobby Manuel.
The word you're looking for is taupe.
No, do you think we need to give a shade so disgusting an actual name?
That's the name of it.
And with a lightly coloured shirt, all wearing that fugly suit.
Always too big.
Right?
It was a coat.
And they tried to like hold on to the edges to keep themselves in it.
What's the joke? Like, if you know a man, he's either wearing a jacket or a coat. That's how you know. If he's rich, it's a jacket. It's a suit jacket. If he's not, that's a coat.
But imagine coming from the abroad. What are you dressed as? They don't even need to tell you that person's from the abroad. That person doesn't speak, and the fake accent doesn't come out.
Oh, that accent.
But just on sight, you would know someone was from the abroad because they wore
the same color.
Okay, so color coordination is only from the abroad.
Color coordination and matching colors are different. This man, I'll call it, it's usually the men.
It's Jamaica.
Yes. He's wearing red basketball vest, red basketball shorts,
Of course.
red socks, red shoe, red, you know those hats that that have a brim but nothing else.
Like a visor?
Yes, a visor. Turned to one side, and the sunglasses. Never forget the sunglasses.
Yeah, saying this, but all I can think about is Nelly in that Dilemma video.
Yes, but all the same color.
Yes.
Janded.
Yes.
Or rich, but mainly janded.
But how many rich people, going back to this traditional versus European, how many rich people are seen wearing native wears?
If they're really, really, I think it's like, if they're rich, they're Western, but if they're really, 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 really rich,
then Alhaji is wearing an abada.
Any Alhaji, all the if he's Alhaji, you know he's Alhaji because he's wearing an agbada that is too big for him.
Imagine Alhaji wearing a business suit.
Which Alhaji is that?
I don't know. But men's fashion also goes through. Men's fashion, new Nollywood, I think they just like mostly follow the trend in men's clothing. Simple. Sometimes you have OC Kuje wearing something like a shirt, but it has like 4 colors on it, and you know that sounds like a him thing. It's very.
Except think about. There's this weird thing that I've noticed in Nollywood films. Where would you normally see? So it's Nollywood, obviously it's set in Nigeria. Nigeria, we have our we talked about like boo-boos and things in our traditional material. Where do you see the traditional material in men? Do you see them in poor men? Do you see them in richer men? You usually see them in the more affluent men, especially
Abada.
Exactly.
Because everyone is knowing you're a big man.
Think in like a office situation, you will be able to tell who owns the business, who's in charge of the business, who's, by the fact that they are not wearing English clothes. They are usually wearing the agbada.
And they are always known as chief.
What's the cut of that in senator? They are wearing senator. Yeah. They'll call them chief. They'll call them
the Alhaji. But then let's talk about royalty. Let's talk about, you know what? Sometimes, you know when people make the Nigerian prince jokes? I say it's not funny, but if you listen to Nollywood, we've got like loads of Nigerian princes. if Nollywood has its way. But they are also styled quite interestingly. If he's a guy that's closer to his roots, he wants to be the prince. The way they are dressed tells you about what their character is going to be like. And this is old Nollywood and YouTube films. If he's wearing more traditional clothes, he's definitely interested in his kingdom, in being the king/prince. But if he's wearing English clothes, that dude's gonna he's just gonna leave his family, his entire status as a prince, and go and live in a small hut with some girl.
I think that can go both ways though.
What do you mean? It can go
either way. I think it could be, if he's wearing English clothes, he might have a more heightened sense of self. So he's a little bit
less rebellious,
more rebellious. So he's that he's, you know, when we talked about the prince in the Cinderella film doesn't have to be a good guy.
Yeah,
it's that guy. Yes.
Let's talk about kings, queens, princesses, and princes. Number 1, the queen, elegantly dressed. I lie. It's not elegant. Lavishly.
Yes.
Always lavishly, according to her level of wickedness. If she's good, she's dressed a bit plainer. But if she's bad,
gaudy. The word is gaudy. She is gaudily dressed.
She's shiny. And then sometimes they choose an actual shiny
like
fabric.
A shiny purple fabric is what's in my head. You know those cheap things that you get, gold material that you can stick gems onto, and they and it's like,
I watched the film and they used cardboard, man. They just like cut a strip of
it's shameless.
They didn't even bother to paint it.
No,
they were just
shameless.
And like they rock a lot of foil paper. I mean, foil is shiny, so
why not? Looks expensive unless
and you have, on one hand, you have the shoddily made, hastily made, fake bead wearing, foil paper glued on germs looking type queen and king and royalty. And then on a different hand, you have those that are dressed to the nines. And you're like, this is a different kind of film. Because it's all coordinated. Their servants still have outfits, but they're good outfits and they all match.
Mm.
Let's go back to the village. Let's go to the village type of clothes. Obviously, last time we spoke about historicals, and it's usually either a one or a two-piece wrap. The stylings that you find in historical are generally really good.
Yeah. I think it's because they're simple.
That's true. That's
so
also
I
true.
think you'll find she's a maiden because she's in a two-piece and then maybe beads or something like that, and she's slightly older, she's now married if she's in a one-piece.
Yeah.
You won't find you're it's very unlikely that you find someone's mother in a two-piece. Or like maybe it's a two-piece and then the skirt is long, whereas all the maidens are like two-piece, short skirts, tight skirts, flared skirts. But it's always short. It's always shorter.
But it is.
But that sort of tells you again what kind of character they are, what kind of film it is.
There are so many others that actually work to harmonize their styling choices and make it quite clear as to what the way people are dressed reflects the society they're in.
Yeah, think of even like the face in a historical drama like that. Think of the face markings that they might have.
Oh yeah.
You will find that in a certain family or a certain group or people that would generally get along, they have similar types of marking. Whereas someone that's maybe come from a different village or find like a different sort of pattern on their face. The men are different from the women. The richer people are different from the poorer people. I think the main point of the podcast is if you're just watching a film to watch a film, you might not see those little things. So the main person that I will use would be someone like Tyler. He'll watch a film and he'll just watch it. Whereas we'll watch it and we're like, oh, she's this because of this.
The physical space of Nollywood, meaning the villages, the houses, the roads, the shops, that definitely influences how we tell the story. Locations, geolocations, that is both, first of all, location of actual Nollywood, because Nollywood, if we're honest, Nollywood is sort of an Igbo and others type of industry, because the houses have Kannywood. Yeah, Kannywood. Don't you know Ali Nuhu? He's from Kannywood. So they have Kannywood and they make all their films usually in Hausa. Yoruba people have their own films usually made in Yoruba. But the Igbos usually make theirs in English, and then other tribes as well make theirs in English. So when we want to talk about the actual location of Nollywood, we can say Lagos, sometimes Abuja, very unlikely to be Abuja. And then if it's around scales, it's in Abuja. That goes for old and new Nollywood. It's mostly located in Lagos, but now I found that some new Nollywood movies branch out. They go to new and interesting places for the locations of their movies. And then you have the YouTube type movies, and
always red sand.
So that denotes the east. So Aba, Enugu, Asaba, all those places, and that is old new Nollywood. Because if it's Lagos, they're gonna pick places in Lagos, places that are easy to get.
They're gonna show that bridge.
Guys,
you said Nollywood film if you don't see that bridge.
No, that's the rule. That's the new Nollywood rule. But then you do have some new Nollywood films, like that's actual new Nollywood, not the YouTube ones. We need to come up with a better name for them.
That's what they are.
And then you do have those, and those that are using the new Nollywood shell, but using an old Nollywood location. One of my favorite films, Family Man. Oh, I love Family Man. Yeah, love that film.
It doesn't seem like a film you'd like. It's a good film.
It's beautifully plotted.
True.
Beautifully. But then we've got this YouTube, these ABBA made movies that are made in those places, and do kind of, first of all, change the kind of movie you're making. You cannot make a movie where like the leads are metropolitan, the leads are in the city, and make it in that location. You have to move to Lagos because there are no big cities that rival Lagos or that would create that
same vibe, that same atmosphere. Yeah.
So immediately you look at a film, immediately you put on the film, from first sight, you know exactly where it's made. Physical spaces do help to tell us a story. For example, Cinderella's story. The Cinderella would usually come from a very small, sparsely decorated house to do whatever with the prince in their huge palace where they've got guards. Guards is also a really important one. If you've got guards around, then you're someone important. Big house. house, big family, fam. Big house, big money. If it's a king, he has wings. There's a south wing and a north wing and a wing for all the wives. I find that very clever. But if it's a poor person's house, first of all, they must have brown chairs.
Brown patterned chairs.
Brown pattern chairs. They must have a curtain over their door. I don't know why.
Y'all can't see my face, but oof.
I think it's to keep the mosquitoes away.
Oof.
So, like, even the decorations of the place, that poor people's houses are not decorated. It's like, if you're like ultra poor, it's just a mattress on the floor. And that's it. For a mat when they're really poor. And if you're like really destitute, it's gotta be an uncompleted building. So many suffering porn movies happen at uncompleted buildings. That's where they live. Maybe that's where they're assaulted or attacked.
Uncle stole our property, now this is where we have to live.
Moving on from actual location, let's talk about locations. The actual locations used in the movie. New Nollywood, the locations are beautiful. You have to agree that they can dress a setup.
Oh, Nollywood, they're always in hotels. They think you don't know.
But we know. We definitely know. So New Nollywood is definitely bringing a range, and it's not always rich man, poor man type thing. No, it's sometimes middle class type homes. And some locations, especially those that they usually get, guys, go and watch Merry Men on Netflix. The location used in those films, they're beautiful. They're perfectly styled. They're like, they introduce something about the character. I think that is one of the good things that New Nollywood is doing. The locations tell you more about the characters than old Nollywood. Old Nollywood,
they don't have as many sets, I guess.
They don't have a range of sets as well. Sometimes it's great to watch new Nollywood movies just to like marvel at the locations, and the buildings. Old Nollywood movie, it's just wherever they found it.
This I considered this the other day. A Ron's girl will never use her actual name, and her actual name is never an English name. That change has to be there. That's another small thing. The name has to match the image. And
here's the thing about New Nollywood that I quite admire. They are equally as likely to use the name Angela as Morenike, and I really give them props to that.
I feel that goes with the trend though.
What do you mean?
Because I think New Nollywood is very based in the real world, where these more African, I guess, or non-Western things are becoming more normal.
Okay.
They're becoming more accepted. They're becoming more everyday. So you can have a co-worker that's called Morenike, whereas however many years ago that's not likely. If anything, she would probably have changed her name to suit you. Whereas in this time where you kind of have to pander to that, you have to pander to the new normal.
You have to be acceptable.
Yeah, you have to. You have to be in the real world, because people will start noticing, especially if it's like a certain director that does this all the time, or a certain producer, a certain company that does this all the time, where they don't have these type of girls in their films. They don't have darker skinned girls in their films. They don't have
such an issue, man.
They don't have people with their natural hair out in their films. The characters are Cindy, James, not Kunle, like you're more likely to see a Kunle in a film now than you are to see a James.
That is
because
so
that's
true.
that's the life that's the new normal, where people are more accepting of differences, I guess. Or they're more accepting of heritage and history and things like that. So
we're currently going through a very nice patch where people are so appreciative of our own culture, as well as the Nigerian culture from external people, or even from Black people, as you said, natural hair, less makeup and things like that. So it's definitely, the way we're telling stories is definitely changing by New Nollywood.
Yeah, I think that's why Nollywood is, like I mentioned before, Nollywood is in a very, very good place right now, as you can't predict which direction it's going to go, because it's going to go with whatever the trend is. They're very good like that.
Well, don't you think that they set the trend?
I think they have to follow the trend.
But who's setting these trends?
I don't know where trends come from.
You know what I think? I think it's directors. Like, now, when I think of New Nollywood, the way it started, I would have to say it's from people like Isong, Royal Art, to people like Desmond Elliott, to Kemi Adetiba, all these people. So New Nollywood is...
Would I say New Nollywood is trend setting? I think any sort of entertainment industry would be a trendsetter.
Yeah.
So like you were saying before, how the actresses in old Nollywood would be the ones, if they're wearing these wigs, then everybody's wearing those wigs.
If
or
using
it could be everybody's wearing those wigs, so obviously they have to. So
it's a circle. It's a fashion circle.
Anyone in the entertainment industry will set a trend, but then they will also follow the trends because they have to stay relevant. You won't see someone in a film that came out in 2010 in 2007
dressing the same way
fashion. Like,
all right, guys, thank you for listening to what's on this part of the episode. Join us next week where I interview some guests and play some games. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.